Thank you, Alex. Welcome, everybody. You haven't seen my lovely home kitchen here today during this COVID pandemic. I've been doing a lot of cooking at home, self-isolated. But as Alex said, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat box, interrupt me, unmute yourself, things like that. So I would like to, first of all, the title of my presentation today is Pantry Preparedness. And I want to share with y'all some secrets from the restaurant industry that we kind of use pretty much every single day that we may not think about it in home kitchens. And that way, once you have a full pantry full of delicious, nutritious, ready to go ingredients, it's a lot easier to, at the end of the day, build meals where you're mostly just assembling. Think about when you go to a restaurant, you're not really, when you sit down and you order from the menu, they're not really starting to cook from scratch at that point. They're really just kind of assembling things because they did all their prep ahead of time. So that's kind of what I want to start with y'all today. Talk about prep in general. I'm going to give you some knife skills. And then also I'm going to talk about nutrition because that's very important. When we're building meals, we want to make sure that we incorporate as many nutrients as possible. You might be able to see here my little table. I have a lot of different colors and textures. And so the biggest kind of section I always tell people to start with is vegetables. Whenever I do consults in clinic at Ochsner, I always get that question of, Mauricio, I eat a lot of meat and potatoes or meat and starch, and I don't want to eat vegetables. And you know, it's not that you have to eat a side of steamed, boring, whatever vegetables. You can add vegetables into any meal. As long as you do kind of the prep ahead of time, it becomes a lot easier. For example, here I just kind of chopped up some raw vegetables that are crunchy, like peppers, celery, carrots. But it doesn't have to be that. We think about vegetables, we think about raw, boring vegetables. Let me give you an example of how you can add vegetables into your prep. One example I like to show people is salsa. Salsa, believe it or not, is a sauce, but it's also a vegetable. It's full of onions, peppers, tomatoes. So let's start off with knife skills. Most people are familiar with an onion, and you might have chopped an onion in the past, but I'm going to show you how to chop it in a kind of an easier way. So onions have two poles, right? The North Pole and the South Pole. The North Pole being where the actual stem comes out.
Am I the only one who lost him?
I think we may be having some technical difficulties. I was also trying to make sure that it wasn't just myself. Thank you, Ms. Donna. He looks like he's he may be coming back on.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. We appreciate your feedback. And Linda and Miss Patty.
I saw that Susan just raised a hand. So Susan, I gave you permissions to speak. If you would like to ask a question, just take yourself off of mute and we can hear you.
No, I was just simply going to ask about my screen froze. I didn't know if it was my end or yours, so that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like he's coming back on board, you all.
What happened?
Thank you, Chef.
All right.
We stopped right around your knife skills. We were getting started.
Okay, so I was kind of
the North Pole and the South Pole.
For those of you that are following at home, the equipment I'm using is a sturdy cutting board. You want to make sure that it doesn't roll. So if your cutting board is kind of sliding, you can always put a wet paper towel underneath or kind of those drawer liners that have a little bit of a grip. Make sure that your cutting board doesn't roll away. Your knife, you always want to grab it close to the blade as opposed to grabbing it at the end. You don't have a lot of control this way. When you grab it close to the blade, it's kind of like an extension of your arm. So you have a lot more control. And then instead of having a garbage can where I'm like running back and forth, I usually keep two bowls. One of them, I call it my trash, and then the other one, I call it my treasure. So part of building a healthy pantry is making some vegetable stock. And so a lot of times the peels of the vegetables that we're cooking, those are actually great for flavor. So that skin of the onion that I just took off, I'm not throwing it away. I'm putting it in my treasure bowl because these are all going to be my ingredients for a good stock. So as I was saying, South Pole is where the roots are, all connected to the layers. So I don't want to cut this right away. I'm going to show you two ways to cut this onion. One is going to be a small dice. So I'm going to put my onion down. My left hand side is going to kind of be what I call it, the bear claw. The nails of my hand are actually pointing backwards as if I was scratching the cutting board. This way, my knife is never going to cut my finger. A lot of times we tend to grab things like this, and it's a lot easier to kind of cut your finger. Whereas when you point your nails backwards, your knuckle is actually going to be able to guide your knife, and so you'll never really cut yourself. You can even look straight, and as long as the knuckle is guiding your blade of your knife, you won't cut yourself because your tips of your fingers will be pointing backwards. So I'm going to start by making long cuts along kind of where those lines of the onion is. And I'm not taking my knife all the way across. I'm really just making parallel lines here. If you notice, I have all these cuts, but the onion all together because I didn't take the root off. So this way it's a lot easier for me to cut. Because onions happen to already have layers, I don't have to do a cross-section cut. I just have to put my knife here and then up and down. And guess what? I got a perfect mince ready to go here. Didn't really take me much time, right? If the knuckle is guiding my knife, I don't have to look at my onion at all either. This is treasure. I'm going to put it in my bowl for my stock. And now I have a perfectly diced minced onion. I really like small containers that are clear when I'm doing prep, or what chefs call prep, because that way when I'm stocking my fridge full of ingredients, clear containers make it easier to see. I know it's tempting to kind of reuse yogurt tubs and things like that, but unless you're putting stickers and labeling them, a lot of times we tend to put it at the back of the fridge, set it and forget it. We look at it a month later and then it's probably rotten. So not such a great idea. The other half of my onion, again, I'm taking this peel off, my outer kind of skin. Putting it in my treasure bowl. And this time, I'm going to do a different cut for example, a salad. So I'm going to put this here. For my salad onion, I am going to cut the root, but not too deep, just slightly. That way it's still sort of together. And instead of following the lines of the onion like I was doing before, not getting to the root, I'm going to cut all the way across following the lines. So I have both of my cuts on both ends, and then I'm going to put my nails kind of on the side of the onion. And starting on the bottom, I'm going to follow those lines that the onion has and cut sort of in a round way so that I'm not necessarily cutting straight down until I get to the middle. Then I can cut straight down. And then as I get kind of closer to the end, then again, I angle my knife again to try to aim to finish the blade of the knife towards the center of the onion. Once I get to that very kind of end, and it gets really hard to angle my knife this way, all I have to do is kind of move my onion the other way, and then I can go ahead and do it that way. So now I have really pretty kind of sliced, really thin parts for a salad or something like that. So this is kind of what I call my onion prep. When I'm making salsa, I like to put, first of all, 3 vegetables, which is onions, tomatoes, and peppers. So let's go ahead and cut our tomato. Today I'm going to use a Roma tomato, or a small tomato. I'm going to first take off the little top here. I'm going to put this in my treasure for my stock. I'm gonna cut this in half, and then I'm gonna lay the flat surface down. This way, it's not rolling away from me in the cutting board. Remember what I did with the onion? I cut it in half and I put the flat side down. Again, that is to help make sure that the onion doesn't roll away from my cutting board. So from here, I can go ahead and make cuts, kind of parallel lines or sticks, if you will. Once I have my sticks, I can turn them over and then cut perpendicular to my previous cuts to get a small dice. And again, remember, my non-dominant hand, which for me is my left, I am making sure that I'm pointing my nails backwards because I don't want to cut myself. And I get a pretty low dice here. I'm gonna put it in my diced onion container because I'm gonna build my salsa all in the same container. So I'm gonna do the same with this tomato. I'm just building little sticks here. The sharper your knife is, actually the easier it is to cut and the less likely you are to cut yourself. You're more likely to cut yourself on a dull knife because the dull knife, usually you're trying to add extra pressure. In a knife, you really should just let the weight of the knife do the cutting. You shouldn't necessarily have to press too hard to do those dice. So again, I get pretty low dice here. I'm gonna go ahead and add this into my little container. And lastly, you guessed it, is peppers. For my salsa, I'm gonna make pico de gallo, so I'm gonna make a little bit spicier. So I'm using this kind of pepper, which is called a jalapeno. All I'm gonna do is cut the top off. This one is not gonna go into my stock. This is probably not good for stock, so I'm gonna put it in my little trash receptacle. So for peppers, again, I'm gonna cut it in half the long way. And if you try to make it a little less spicy, the majority of the heat in peppers is actually found in the veins. So all you really have to do to cut some of that heat is take some of the veins away. That way you get just the inside of the pepper. If you want to kind of brave it out and take it super spicy, you can go ahead and leave the vein or the center of that pepper. But for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and take away that center, and I get two little half kind of peppers. From here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just cutting long strips alongside the jalapeno, and then I'm going to cut them perpendicular to my previous cuts to get a small dice. I always get asked the question, Mauricio, if I'm not familiar with peppers, should I be using my bare hands? And the answer is no. If you're not familiar with hot peppers, we'll find out pretty quickly that the capsaicin in peppers sticks around for a long time. So if you're chopping up and then maybe you touch your eye, you touch something else, it's definitely gonna burn. So if it's your first time, I would highly recommend just getting a glove, just a kind of tight, either rubber or nylon glove, just so that you don't get that capsaicin in your skin. If you are familiar with peppers, you know all you really need to do is wash your hands thoroughly after dealing with hot peppers so that you don't accidentally get that capsaicin in other parts of your body. So again, I got my fine dice here for my jalapeno. I'm going to put that here in my little container. And guess what? Now I have a vegetable that's also a sauce, which I'm calling salsa. I can just kind of shake this. Sometimes you can even buy it like this at the grocery store, and all they did is just chop up for you, and they're charging like $4 for that labor. So again, if you value your labor or your money a little bit more, then go ahead and do this at home. If you have the money to spend, then sure, go for it. One of the things that I don't really like about store-bought salsa is that they have to make it last in that shelf, right? So they're probably gonna add too much vinegar. So to me, it tastes a little bit too acidic. At home, to kind of wake it up, I usually put a little bit of lime juice in here, just to kind of make that acidic kind of taste in there. but I'm not necessarily putting a ton of it in here. You can also add fresh herbs like cilantro. You can add a little bit of salt, or if you're gonna kind of have it with chips or something like that, I typically don't put salt in my salsa because the chips already have salt. So then you kind of double up on sodium. So I like to store in the fridge like this so that I'm not adding so much salt to every single component that I'm cooking with. Next, let's chop up some zucchini. So this is actually a summer squash. All I'm gonna do is take off the top. This one doesn't really go well on stock. I don't usually like to cut things that are longer than my knife blade. So I'm gonna make some cuts here to kind of make this easier to cut. So now that I have kind of smaller pieces, I can decide how to cut these. If I wanted to kind of cook an old school recipe from the 1980s, I could just do coins. It's 2020, I'm trying to be a little bit fancy. I don't know about you. You can do that spiralizer thing that looks like a pencil sharpener to make noodles, or I think they call them zoodles. You can also just kind of cut them in a bias like this. And this is kind of how usually you get summer squash in restaurants like Chinese food or things like that, where you're just kind of getting a rough chop. Again, I'm not trying to be super fancy with this. All I'm really trying to do is save time so that at the end of the day, it's one less step and I don't have to think about, oh man, I have to chop up all these vegetables. Pretty fast here. I like my zucchini in big pieces because I know that it cooks pretty soft. And so if I chop it too small, then it becomes kind of mushy. Maybe I want it soft if I'm building, say, like a hamburger patty or something like that, where I want a little bit of kind of moisture in there. A lot of times when we buy ground meat, because I recommend people buy lean, it doesn't have as much fat to make that moist. But what you can do to make sure that your patty stays moist is to add more vegetables, things like onions, bell peppers, celery, zucchini, mushrooms. All those things are going to add a lot of moisture that you're missing from that fat, and that way your patty doesn't become kind of hocky-pucky tasting. Let's do now bell pepper. Bell peppers, sometimes you can get them where they stand kind of straight. Sometimes they're really pointy, so they're just kind of fall. I'm going to show you my favorite way to cut peppers. First thing I do is I lay it on the flat side, so probably on its side, and then I'm going to cut the top across this way. This is trash. And I get this top right here. Then I'm going to cut the bottom. And then the last step, I call it rolling out the red carpet, right? All I'm doing is taking that vein and cutting all along. I waste very little pepper, almost nothing. You saw that all I really threw away was this little stem and this actual center. And I get all this delicious pepper ready to go. Because it's a flat surface, I can really go to town on this. I could either cut strips, kind of wide strips, if I'm making a dip, like a bean dip, like hummus, or a black bean dip, or maybe I make a yogurt dip. So I could put this in my crudité platter. If I'm trying to cut really small dice, maybe I'll do the same thing, right? Little thin strips first, and then turn them perpendicular, and then cut perpendicular to my previous cuts, and I get that fine little dice. I can add this fine dice to salads, I can add them to soups, I can add them to my jambalaya, whatever it is that I want to play with. I could mince it even smaller and kind of make a little dip with this. Possibilities are endless. So again, if you're really not into hot, spicy food, you can even add this to a salsa instead of the jalapeno. So it's just another way to get another vegetable in there. Maybe you're doing celery for a salad. Celery, I like to kind of pre-wash it when I first get home. Try to just get most of the surface dirt. Because I don't like the dryness of the tips, I usually cut those off. These are treasure. I put that into my stockpile. And I chuck the bottom here. Treasure, again, stockpile. I could either cut it a long way here Another long way here. Now that I have strips, I can do that dice here. And I get little celery. By the way, does anybody know what celery, peppers, and onions together is called in the South? It's called the Trinity. So the other way I could do it is maybe if I'm doing it in a salad and I don't necessarily want to have these type of cuts in a salad, I'll cut it a little fancier, which is going to be in a bias. So I'm going to stand it straight on this side so it doesn't roll away. And then my knife, instead of cutting it strictly down this way, I'm going to go on a bias here and let the knuckles kind of guide me. Again, with my nails, kind of moving them slowly. It's like I'm scratching the celery. I can go on a really hard bias or in a soft bias. But at the end of the day, I get really pretty pieces. With practice comes the thinness. So if your cuts are not as thin as mine, don't worry about it. I have 12 years of knife skills going on you, so you don't have to feel bad if you're just kind of starting off this way. So check it out. I have a whole bunch of vegetables prepped. I'm kind of ready for my week. The last thing I wanted to show everybody is when you're talking about greens, you could either do one of two things. You could either buy pre-washed, these are kind of triple wash greens that come in the grocery store. You don't have to wash these once you come home. These are ready to eat as it is. Or if you're buying the non kind of clamshell things, all you really want to do is kind of rinse them, make sure that there's not a lot of dirt in there because dirt can hide in some of the crevices, and then kind of dry them. You can toss them in kind of a salad spinner just so that there's not too much excess moisture. And then you just put them in a tub and kind of put that top in there. Here I have some lettuce, I have some parsley, I have some cilantro. This is kind of how I keep my greens in my fridge so that they don't lose that crispness. You can also find things in the grocery store like washed and prepped. These are green beans. And again, I don't have to cut the little tips off, blanch them, shock them. This is kind of cutting a lot of steps for me because it's kind of pre-done. You are going to kind of pay a premium for something like this, but you can do it. The other way to do it too is you can buy frozen or canned vegetables. The frozen ones, you're just going to lose texture. Same thing with canned. If you're buying frozen vegetables, I highly recommend you only buy vegetables. A lot of times they'll hide sauces or they'll season them. Again, that comes with a lot of salt. And so you don't necessarily want to start cooking with really salty ingredients. So try to make sure that it's just vegetables. If you're going for canned, find ones that say no salt added because you don't necessarily want to start, again, with that saltiness all throughout the dish. Something I like to do with my carrots, I kind of grate them or chop them really fine. This is called a very fine julienne or little matchsticks. And maybe I'll put this in a salad, or maybe I'll kind of pre-boil them and put them in, once they're soft, and maybe some pancake batter. So then my pancake kind of like carrot cake. So I'm actually doubling up on vegetables there. So again, possibilities are endless when it comes to vegetables, as long as you do some prep kind of ahead of time. In terms of avocados, I like to kind of wait until they're really ripe. And then once they're ripe, I kind of want to stop the ripeness, right? I don't want them to get brown. And so what I'll do is I will just cut it in half. I'll get a spoon here. And then I'll just put it into a container with a little bit of lime. And that way, the acidity in the lime, or I guess the low pH in lime, kind of allows for less oxygen to access the avocado skin. And again, without oxygen, you don't get that oxidation, and so they don't turn brown. So this is kind of how you can get a really fresh avocado dip, because all it really is is just avocados and lime juice.
Chef, we're getting lots of questions in the chat, and one of them was talking about the your lettuce mix, your salad. I know a lot of folks, they buy the prepackaged salad mix, and then all of a sudden they say that bag went bad. And so we were also having this question in the chat about how long does the salad, the lettuce, stay fresh in the refrigerator?
Excellent question. It really depends on when you open it and what you do after you open it. So once it's kind of bagged, it's usually pre-washed and kind of dried slightly. But greens in general, they're still live plants, so they're still breathing kind of oxygen and hydrogen and water. So if you open them and you let air in, then they're going to breathe all that and kind of lose water. And so if you just kind of fold the bag and put it in the fridge, it's probably going to go bad really quickly. Something that you can do to kind of save them is put them in a Tupperware with a wet paper towel on the bottom. That way it's still sort of moist, but it has a little bit of kind of that oxygen on top. Try not to crush them like really tightly in there. When I open something like this, I don't necessarily have to worry so much because the amount of kind of air in here allows it to kind of stay there. The bag ones are the ones that probably go bad quicker because the bag is just touching the surface of those leaves.
Perfect. And do you recommend, when we're doing our veggies, keeping them in the refrigerator before use, or keeping them out of the refrigerator? How
Great
do
question
we
too.
store them?
There are some vegetables that I would recommend you keep outside of the refrigerator, things like onions, garlic, tomatoes, peppers, things that you want to keep in the refrigerator: zucchini, carrots, celery, any greens, any kind of green beans, things like that. When you put tomatoes in the fridge, they tend to kind of lose a little bit of flavor. So if I'm going to make a salsa, I'm only going to make a little bit because it has tomato and put it in the fridge this way. The rest of my tomatoes, I'm probably going to leave in my pantry, just sitting out next to my onions and garlic. Potatoes are another thing that you want to not put in the refrigerator, but you want to keep it in a dark, cool place. So if you put it on your countertop and they get a lot of light, they're probably going to start sprouting. Or if they put them down in a cupboard and it gets warm, then they're probably going to start sprouting again. So potatoes like cool, dark places. You can also pre-prep things like, for example, I did some sweet potatoes here. All I did was just chop them up and pre-boil them. And that way they're kind of ready to go. If I decide to do maybe a stir fry during the week, all my veggies are kind of pre-done. So now that kind of I've talked a little bit about vegetables, let's talk about the other components of a balanced meal. So that's where we get into this side. Some of the handouts I provided preemptively. We're talking about when you're building a balanced meal, you want to make sure that you add all the food groups so that you do add all the nutrients that your body requires. Vegetables are going to give you a lot of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and enzymes because of those colors, but they're mostly water and fiber, and so they don't really provide you a lot of energy in the form of calories. That's why a lot of people say, well, I don't have to eat vegetables, I can live fine and dandy. Sure, you don't get a lot of calories in vegetables. However, you do miss out on a lot of those micronutrients if you don't eat the vegetables. So proteins, starches, dairy, fats, this is where you get the majority of your macronutrients or calorie kind of ingredients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Starting with starches, I really recommend going for high fiber starches, things like whole grain crackers. You can pre-boil whole wheat pasta ahead of time so that it's ready for you. You can do potatoes or sweet potatoes that are going to be a more fibrous starch. You can do things like brown rice, pre-cooked, ready to go, right? You kind of cook it in stock, again, vegetable stock, because you want that flavor, and then just keep it in the fridge, ready to go for you. Oats, another great source of starch and fiber. And then when we kind of go into starchy proteins, then we start looking at things like legumes, lentils, black beans. These I cooked ahead of time. Lentils, again, I have a whole pantry ready, full of ingredients that are ready for me. Maybe I'm making a red sauce. I can toss a little bit of lentils with my ground beef or my ground turkey or whatever. And that way I cut the amount of saturated fat from the meat, but I'm still getting plenty of protein because lentils are packed with protein. And now I increased fiber. So again, I'm not telling you go full vegetarian, but there are ways to kind of cut down some of the things that we don't want too much of. Things like sodium, things like saturated fat, things like sugar. So beans are going to be a starch and a protein together. And then when it comes to kind of more heavy proteins, we're looking more at things like fish. If you're getting into dairy and it's low fat dairy, that's going to be kind of a high protein, low fat way. Things like nuts are going to give you a little bit of protein, but instead of starch, now you're getting fat. So nuts are kind of a great source of dietary fat. I usually tell people, try not to eat a lot of oil, but eat things like avocados and nuts because those will give you a lot of fat with fiber in there. So that fiber is not adding a lot of carbs, but it is adding what your body really does require and need. When you're buying things like canned tuna or packed tuna, again, it might look pretty even, but try to make sure that it says reduced sodium or low sodium or maybe no salt added if you can find something like that, because it really does make a huge difference. A lot of times we might not see it at the beginning because they're trying to advertise low calorie, high protein, but when you turn over the package and you see this one, it's got 150 milligrams per pouch, and this one only has, I'm sorry, this one has 300, so this one has double the amount of salt. And you wouldn't really know it unless you start kind of taking closer attention to there. Another protein I really like that's very healthy is eggs. Good old egg, right? You can pre-boil them ahead of time. Maybe I want to make an egg salad. Check it out. All I have to do here is just chop up my egg. Instead of using mayo, I'm going to use a high fiber fat like my guacamole here. Maybe I want to lower the amount of saturated fat that I'm getting in the diet because maybe I have elevated cholesterol. Well, I'll put one full egg, but on my second egg, I'll just take off the yolk, not really eat my yolk here, and I'm doubling on the white. I did get a little bit of yolk from that one single whole egg, but I'm doubling up on that lean protein. And now I just mix this up. It's like an egg salad, but again, instead of mayo, using my high fiber, healthy fat from my avocado. Call this a Hulk egg salad because it's got that green color. If you're cooking with kids, a lot of kind of those names really go a long way. So I highly recommend doing that. And then when it comes to kind of seasonings and other things that you want to kind of cheat, this is where you finally get to use your salt, right? If you start with salty ingredients, then I really wouldn't recommend added kind of sauces and things like that. But if you start with plain ingredients, then you can start kind of playing with this. Something I tell people to always have in pantry is olive oil and vinegar. So I have here, this is red wine vinegar, this is balsamic vinegar. You don't have to be that fancy. Apple cider vinegar, regular white vinegar. It's a great kind of thing to do. I'm going to show you everybody how to make a very simple salad dressing because I feel like a lot of the salad dressings that are out in the market, because they have to be shelf stable, they can't really leave it at kind of a normal flavor. They have to add a lot of salt and sugar to lower what's called free water activity so that bacteria can't really grow in that medium. And so when they add that extra salt, extra sugar to make sure that it's shelf stable, yeah, it's great for the company to have that, but nutritionally, sometimes we may end up getting too much. And so we don't really want to have a lot of that. It's a lot better just to start with kind of basic ingredients. So a very easy ratio to do for a vinaigrette is going to be 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. So that means 2 parts oil, 1 part vinegar. You can measure it if you're really anal retentive about it, or if you're kind of more free-spirited, you can just kind of eyeball it. So if I know here, okay, this is my line of oil, I'm only going to want half of that line when it comes to vinegar. So I'm gonna do a red wine vinaigrette, because why not? If you have kids at home, you can talk about density, right? How the density makes sure that these two liquids don't mix. To kind of mix them, I like to add an emulsifier. You can either add an egg yolk as an emulsifier, or you can add a little bit of mustard. I'm gonna add a little bit of Dijon in here. Not a lot, just a little squirt. To add a little bit of sweetness, maybe I'll add some honey. Again, not a lot. This is probably a quarter teaspoon. It's not really to make it super sweet. It's just to kind of balance that edge of that vinegar. From here, maybe I'll use some dried herbs. This is more of an Italian dressing now. So I'm adding here a dried herb. When it comes to dried seasonings, I really don't like the pre-made seasonings because the first ingredient is always salt. It's the cheapest ingredient. Second ingredient is always going to be paprika because that's what gives it color. And then the rest of it is what they call, is the word, like when they own it and they can't really share, but it's really, really low amounts. So this way, if you buy the actual dry seasonings, you're making sure that the salt is the very last kind of thing you add. So in here, I'm gonna add onion powder, not onion salt, onion powder. I add garlic, again, not garlic salt, garlic powder. I'm gonna add a little bit of black pepper. And then the very, very last step, I'm gonna add salt. And I'm only gonna add like a little pinch, not a lot. Now I can go ahead, take my lid and start shaking it. If you have kids at home, you can tell them to shake it. And guess what? Now I have an Italian vinaigrette ready to go, and I can put this in my pantry.
Chef, we
Yes.
have a lot of folks, we talk about kids at home. We have people in schools, people are making their lunches daily, even bringing them to work. And people are bored with their bag lunches. Do you have any tips? And this particular vinaigrette recipe is great, but other tips to make your lunches healthy and interesting. And some of our friends at St. Michael's Special School really want to know.
Some things that go great with kids is playing with color and texture. So when it comes to vegetables, tell them, pick your favorite color. Let's go to the grocery store and try to find as many vegetables that are your favorite color, right? So maybe they say purple. Well, this is a great talking point to start talking about eggplant and purple cabbage and purple onions, and then really kind of play with them and start teaching them the taste profiles. Like, okay, is this sweet? Is this spicy? Is this sour? Is this bitter? Is this salty? And kind of make that kind of fun game. The other thing besides color that goes great with kids is texture. So if they're always kind of getting a plain sandwich, maybe you put cheese and a deli meat and bread and it's kind of all soft, adding things like slices of cucumber for crunch, and then you're going to be like, whoa, what's happening here? Maybe you add some bell peppers in there. Maybe you do kind of a fancy mayo where you can start with mayo or start with avocado, whatever you want. But chop up really fine bell peppers and onions, add them in there, and they're going to add a little kind of thing of texture. They're going to be like, whoa, there's something in here that's kind of new and interesting, kind of fun. Shapes go a long ways as well. So especially with younger kids, I'm talking here like 7H or below, cookie cutters. So cookie cutters are not just for cookies. You can kind of do this with pepper, put it flat, use a cookie cutter. Maybe you cut out a sandwich slice, use a cookie cutter. Maybe you're doing tortillas, use a cookie cutter. Those are really gonna accentuate kind of the funness of building a healthy kind of balanced lunch for your kids, especially when they're going to school. Maybe you want to add more color to something plain like a Greek yogurt, for example. I can puree a vegetable and add that into my yogurt, and now I have a different color profile for my yogurt. I can puree some sweet potatoes or maybe I roast some beets and add them, and I get this bright fuchsia color in my yogurt. Adding berries to it as opposed to buying a flavored yogurt. Typically, yogurts that come flavored have a lot of sugar, and you don't really need that much sugar. FYI, plain yogurt by itself has plenty of sugar in the form of lactose. That's why I always say when you're buying food, buy ingredients, don't buy food products. Plain yogurt is an ingredient. Flavored yogurt is a food product. So always start with plain yogurt and then make your own kind of things at home. You can either go the sweet route, like I said, adding some berries or a little bit of honey, or you can go the savory route. Maybe you add a little garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, some minced up vegetables, maybe some celery and onions. And now you have like a veggie kind of dip that you can use for, maybe you cut a cucumber this way. I just peeled some of it. I scooped some of the seeds and I have a little cucumber boat. Maybe I put my yogurt in there. They're going to think it's cream cheese, but you're getting a lot less fat, a lot higher protein, and you're getting all the fiber from the veggies.
Love that. That was very helpful. And another quick question. I know we're going to be wrapping up this section soon, but wanted to ask about pre-boiling. You use the term pre-boiling, pre-cooking a lot, and people were wondering what is the time on pre-boil, or is it separate for each type of vegetable or food?
It's separate. Again, what we're doing, pre-boiling in the industry, we call it blanching. And so blanching will just depend on which texture you're starting with and which texture you want to end with. So for example, something like a starch, like a potato, you know how to cook potatoes from crawfish boils, right? But maybe you want to pre-boil some other vegetables like green beans. So just take it a little bit. Maybe you take it out in between to kind of feel what the texture looks like. To kind of quickly stop from overcooking, you can do another method, which we call shocking. So blanching is what we use a lot in the industry. Shocking means that you put the vegetable in a bath of ice water. So it goes from boiling water to ice water, and all of a sudden the cooking stops immediately. Especially if you're doing something green, like green beans, snap peas, they will actually get this really bright green color, and it comes really pretty. That's why in restaurants, when you see like cooked broccoli, for example, they didn't start the broccoli when you order it. They probably pre-blanched and shocked it, had it in a pork container ready to go. And when you ordered it, all they did was heat up some butter in a pan and add the pre-shocked broccoli. That way, it's just kind of getting heated, and then maybe you add a little bit of seasoning there, but the actual cooking has been pre-done. So it really does depend on the type of vegetable and the texture that you're ultimately trying to aim to go for. I'm going to get a very, very fast recipe going here for y'all. So I'm just going to heat up some oil. When it comes to protein, I talked a little bit about nuts as a sort of protein, eggs as a sort of protein, pouched fish, but also you can get pouched frozen fish all the time. I really enjoy frozen salmon. I know it's kind of crazy, but it's a lot more convenient because it kind of comes pre-sliced. All I have to really do is take it out of the fridge, take out the plastic wrap, and I'm ready to go on my pan. So I'm just gonna heat oil really fast. By the way, the oil I'm using here is not extra virgin olive oil because it smokes really fast. I'm actually using this thing I found called flax oil for cooking. So that will kind of get a higher smoking point so that my oil doesn't burn before I put my fish in. If you can't find this at the store, don't worry. Canola oil is another great oil to use for cooking. Try to save extra virgin olive oil for cold uses. Like when you're making a dressing, that's when you would want to use the cold oil. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to let it start cooking. In the meantime, I'm going to get a big bowl. I'm going to add some of my dressing in here. Not a lot, just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and open my container of greens because these are already pre-done. Super quick, super fast. Notice how I added my dressing first and then my greens. I only added a little bit of dressing. A lot of times people think to overdress greens. All you really need to do is create a slight sheen on your greens. So a little bit of dressing goes a long way. If you go to a picnic and you put your greens and then you kind of like plop dressing on top, guess what? You're eating way too much dressing. You probably want more greens than you want dressing, but it's a little bit harder to do. In restaurants, we always start with a big bowl. We put the dressing first, and then we add our ingredients in here. To this, I'm gonna add some of my slivered kind of sliced onions. Maybe I'll add some of my carrots in here. I'll add my celery, some kind of cheating green beans, because why not? And then I'm gonna get some tongs, and now I'm just gonna dress everything, kind of moving it from the bottom to the top, just getting that slight sheen in there. I don't really need it to be swimming. I just need that pretty slight sheen. It already smells delicious. And this is what you will be doing at the end of the day once you have your prep all done. So I'm going to take my greens, pre-dressed in here. I'm going to add some tomatoes. I'm going to I'll add an egg. Why not? To get some protein in there, right? I started with vegetables. I am going to add the salmon for protein as well. What am I missing? I need a starch. Well, I can use a starchy protein like beans, but I'm already putting eggs and salmon. So maybe I'll use a different kind of starch. Something like sweet potato. So this is pre-boiled sweet potato. I'm just adding a little bit there. Maybe I want some extra fat. So I'm going to add some slivered onions, just for a little texture. I'm sorry, slivered almonds, not onions. My salmon's cooking pretty fast because, again, it's a pre kind of portioned fish. Something that you want to do is to make sure that once you put your fish down, don't move it if it doesn't want to be moved. So right now, I just try to pick it up, and it's holding tight to the pan, saying, no, I don't want to. So just let it go. Eventually, once the crust forms, then it will release pretty fast. And you won't need to mess with it too much. Oh, I forgot, I also roasted some potatoes earlier. So maybe I'm gonna add some potatoes in here. Oh, that's too much potatoes. Check it out. It's pretty simple to kind of build a very balanced meal once you have all your prep done. Again, it's just a matter of assembling. Look at this crust. I don't know if you can see, but I'm getting excited. Beautiful crust. I'm going to flip it over. At this time, if I want to, maybe I'll add a little bit of salt, not too much. And I'll also add a tiny bit of an acid, like my lime juice in here. Look at that. Woo! Now we're cooking. I'm going to sear all sides of it. And then I'm going to let it rest. Boom. Check it out. Our salmon is perfectly cooked. That did not take a lot of time. Really fast. When you're starting with a pre-prepped ingredient, everything kind of seems kind of easy, and it's like you're almost cheating. I usually let it rest because I don't want my veggies to get too wilty, but for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and plate it as is. I'm gonna put my salmon up here. Oh my God, what a beauty. Check it out. Now we have a balanced meal ready to go. Prep done, cooking done, family impressed. You feel like the king of queen or the house. I think I'm gonna make this my stopping point. In that way, if you guys have any questions, and I know that you all have more stuff in your programming for the rest of today.
Thank you so much. We had so many fun questions, and I tried to kind of roll them up into a little ball so you can get them all. One quick question that we just got in: would you consider that one serving of salmon?
Yes, a serving of fish is 4 to 6 ounces. So you kind of look at the palm of your hand. If it's kind of a white flat fish, then you can kind of use your whole palm as a guide. The beauty about getting frozen fish is that it comes pre-portioned. So that would be great as a portion. If you're going for like red meat, then the serving is 3 to 4 ounces. So about a deck of cards or an old school cell phone, because I know cell phones nowadays are like giant. So the reason why we say that is because red meat tends to have more saturated fat, whereas fish tends to have more polyunsaturated fats. So try to go lower on the saturated fat intake, regardless of whether you have cholesterol problems or not. Fish is kind of great in terms of the fat amounts. On that handout I gave you, I kind of told everybody 1 ounce of meat, whether that's fish or chicken or beef, gives you about 7 grams of protein. So if you're aiming for like 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, just divide that by 7, and then you get that number of ounces. So 21 divided by 7 is 3 ounces. 30 divided by 7, it's kind of like 4 and a little bit. So that's kind of where we make those numbers.
Thanks so much, Chef. If you have some time, we'd love you to stay on because I do think that our panelists have tons of questions. We're going to quickly roll into something that I think some folks on the call are waiting to hear about, which are our Healthy Business Awards. And so right now I'm going to roll it over to Donna, and Chef, please stay on. And everyone, thank you so much for your patience. We may run a few minutes over, but we want to thank you so much for your time, and we'll go ahead and get started, Donna.
Okay, great. Welcome to the Live Well Jefferson Healthy Business Awards ceremony. I'll go as quickly as I can to make sure we don't go over. We've saved the best for last. I'm Donna Austin, chair of the Jefferson Chamber's Health and Wellness Committee. We are honored to have representatives from across the business community with us today. And the purpose of the Jefferson Chamber's Live Well Jefferson Healthy Business Awards is to highlight and celebrate members who are actively engaged in healthy initiatives in the workplace and also provide ideas for healthy changes that can be made. Today, we especially want to honor 5 businesses that have been recognized this year.
And thank you all again. I'm Coretta LaGarde, and I'm the co-chair of the Jefferson Chamber Health and Wellness Committee. We have 3 categories of awards for you this afternoon. The most creative awards category, the best employee-led program category, and the up-and-comer category. We'll go to the next slide, please.
Okay, you ready? We will start with our most creative awards category. Coretta or I will say a little about the outstanding accomplishments of our winners as we go along. We'll start with the first business we'd like to recognize is Cornerstone. The wellness program at Cornerstone focuses first on awareness and prevention, and second on education and behavior changes to help their employees achieve their health goals with the employee experience as one of Cornerstone's 5 strategic priorities. This program involves partnering with Ochsner to roll out a virtual clinic, important in these COVID times, wellness activities including free chair massages, cooking demonstrations, and pet adoptions, and full utilization of the on-site medical facility, a doctor and nurses. Congratulations to Cornerstone. Coretta, you got the next one?
Yes, I apologize, on mute. The next business we will honor today is Magnolia Physical Therapy. The wellness program at Magnolia Physical Therapy utilizes Go 365 through Humana, which keeps the employees on this team on track and motivated. This program involves wellness meditation Wednesdays, free physical therapy visits, and massages. Congratulations, Magnolia Physical Therapy.
Ooh, all these massages. Now, the next we'll move on to the Best Employee-Led Awards category. We'd like to recognize Southern Eagle. The wellness program at Southern Eagle is their comprehensive commitment to making their employees aware of the benefits of healthy living, as well as provide a healthier, more productive lifestyle for them and their families. Also using the Go 360 platform from Humana, this program has an employee-led wellness team from all departments. The wellness team meets monthly and develops priorities, and they also encourage family members to be active participants in their wellness initiative. Congratulations to Southern Eagle.
We'd like to now recognize Delta Personnel Incorporated. The wellness program at Delta Personnel truly puts employees first, brings awareness of how important eating healthy and physical activity are, along with mental health, as important steps to business productivity and overall health. This program focuses on creating a balance of staying healthy while rising to the demands of being successful. They schedule small segmented workouts and outdoor cardio for lunch breaks that are given on by the staff. And they incorporate motivational challenges for the success of everyone on the team based upon nutrition, physical activity, and mindfulness. Congratulations, Delta Personnel.
And the final award of the day is the Port of New Orleans. The Port of New Orleans believes that wellness programs play a significant role in cultivating a healthier and more engaged workforce. When the idea for the Ship Shape program was created, they decided to start small and allocate a budget to reflect successes and growth. This program involves employee challenges to foster employee engagement, employee-earned credit towards annual medical premiums, mental wellness, healthy cooking demonstrations, lunch and learns now hosted via Zoom, virtual wellness fair, pop-up challenges revolving around the new norm since COVID-19, healthy bending as they transition back in the daily office environment. Congratulations, Port of New Orleans Ship Shape Wellness Program.
We have some amazing businesses in Jefferson Parish, and we want to thank you all for all you've done this past year to engage the health of your employees. Congratulations to all of our Live Well Healthy Jefferson Business Award winners. We are going to continue to keep the lines open for any questions here today, but we want to say that we truly are moved by everyone that is creating a culture of health in Jefferson Parish. And I'm going to pass it over to Alex to make sure that we close out if we have any other Q&A from the folks here for Chef, because it was so much information. We don't want to just close out this afternoon without giving us time to answer any further questions. So we'll be checking the chat really quickly. I'll be running through, and Alex, if you have any other updates. You know what it was, Chef? There were several questions around how much can food stay fresh in the refrigerator. So there were several times where people asked about freshness of food, how long does it last? And on one of those guides that you share with us, do we have information about that?
Sure. So in terms of starches, they will be the ones that last the longest. So if you're cooking rice ahead of time, as long as you're not like taking it out and bringing it back in and taking it out and bringing it back in, and you just kind of keep it refrigerated, using it once or twice more. If you cook way too much rice, then obviously it's going to go bad before you're able to finish it all. I happen to live by myself, so I don't ever cook more than, I guess, a week's worth of rice. Things like sweet potatoes, they're just really boiled. So as long as they stay cold in a fridge environment, they're going to stay a long time. Beans might go a little bit quicker. You can always, if you want to cheat, buy canned beans. Again, with canned anything, I always recommend try to look for at least low sodium or salt-free if possible. That way you can use salt somewhere else for different flavor profile. When you're chopping up raw vegetables, they're going to stay pretty long too. Things like zucchini, things like cucumbers, carrots, celery, peppers, onions, they're not really going to go bad quickly. The lime juice in salsa really helps it kind of have that shelf life a little bit longer. So that doesn't go bad quickly either. What I mean by quickly, I mean they're going to last at minimum a week. So again, I kind of recommend taking the weekend to do the prep, and then during the week, kind of just play around with what you already prepped. That way you don't have to start from scratch at the end of a long, busy day. Things like boiled eggs, they're not going to last longer than a week. So try not to do a whole dozen eggs if you can't finish a dozen eggs in 1 week. Lentils might go a little bit faster in terms of the week. So usually if I'm doing lentils, I'll cook them and then maybe I'll make some chili and add them in there, or I'll make some patties. If I recook them again, then I can kind of freeze those patties, and that way they're going to last longer. Or if I cook them in chili, which has like some paprika and some chili powder and some tomato powder, tomato paste or tomato sauce, they're going to last longer than just like the plain pre-cooked lentil with just stock. Pasta, again, it can last as long as you want. Usually for pasta, I tell people once you kind of cooked it and rinsed it a little bit with cold water, before you put it in a container, add just a tiny bit of oil. That way, again, creates that sheen throughout the pasta, and you're able to like use it later without it being a huge kind of flop mess. Sauces, like the dressing, that can last months. They're not really going to go bad. You're making bean dips like hummus or just regular bean dip. Again, that can last 2-3 weeks.
Thank you so much, Chef, and thank you to all the businesses once again that were recognized today, and everyone that is doing such a great job at keeping Jefferson Parish healthier. We do hope that you can join us next week as we pick up on Monday and Tuesday for the Worksite Wellness Week, which was postponed, unfortunately, due to Hurricane Sally. Everyone, thanks again. Please enjoy your weekend and see you soon.
Thank you.